It has been a wild few days already this week, and I'm sure the next few days will just get wilder. But anyway, a lot of that just means content for you. How about that? So, of course, this is the Golden Stallion here with you, the man of tomorrow's Savzu, the rated R, radio star, the podcast champion. Tap the belt. Yes. Here for your Sovereign Tech Patreon-only Wednesday Q&A, where I can actually get into all of the questions that get sent in to me, not just one or two at best, that I can get into a Sovereign Tech Prime episode. So, oh boy, we're going to run the gamut on this one. We're going to get into quite a few. We got some tech questions. We actually have kind of a philosophical question that I want to be careful with. And maybe we'll get into some geeky shit. But, let's start it off with a little bit of geeky shit. Not necessarily a question, but I recently acquired, in fact, it's funny, Entrada didn't do, I know I mentioned these two companies a lot, Entrada and La La Land Records. It's because they come out with, frankly, with music that interests me. They come out with rare soundtracks like that. That's their business. It's what they release. And La La Land Records recently released, and it's already sold out as far as I know. There was only like 3,000 units made of the CD, and again, it's not available digitally. They made a limited edition release of the soundtrack for The Day the Earth Stood Still, from the original one from 1951 by Bernard Herrmann. The score is by Bernard Herrmann, which is just this wild ass fucking soundtrack. Like, not as cool as Forbidden Planet, right? As far as soundtracks go. But really, really slick and very epic, and you listen to it and man, you get transported back in time, But I have one of the 3,000 units. I jumped on that as soon as it came out, and it was funny too because I also they had a sci-fi sale going on because of the release supposedly of The Day the Earth Stood Still soundtrack, which was a very big deal. Which I agree, it's a big deal. And it's a gorgeous. The sound quality that they release this with is phenomenal. They really cleaned it up. It just sounds fantastic. But I also picked up, they had the 50th anniversary, I guess it would have been from 2015, but the 50th anniversary soundtrack collection of Lost in Space, which is like a 12-disc collection from the original Lost in Space. Fuck the new shit. And man, going through some of that, Johnny Williams, going through some of that was just... Oh, what mind-blowing. But also, the other thing I wanted to mention, I got a couple things I want to mention here. Also, Entrada released, and with no fanfare whatsoever. So those were both La La Land Records. But Entrada released this week, or a couple weeks ago. Again, I didn't know it even came out. Like they usually make a big deal about their new releases that came out. Like they had the Rambo 3 soundtrack come out like last month, and they were really, really promoting the fucking shit out of that. And right on, because it's Jerry Goldsmith and it's one of Jerry Goldsmith's best scores, by a long shot. And Jerry Goldsmith's the greatest composer of all time, in my opinion. Yes, he's better than John Williams. To give him, it's hard to say whatever his greatest scores are, but Rambo 3 is certainly right up there with, the likes of the 13th Warrior, First Night, The Omen, and so on. But anyway, they released, fortunately, I was just kind of looking around. I was actually looking to get the soundtrack for the 2-disc for the Beastmaster. But they released a full version with tons of unreleased music for the for Stargate SG-1 Children of the Gods. And they labeled it under the Final Cut, which is the version that you generally see now that took out the nudity. I'm not going to talk about that again. I've talked about that many times already in Sovereign Tech's history, because I think it's bullshit that they cut out when Shah-Ray gets stripped nude for very good reasons. That they had that scene originally, and them pulling it is stupid. Anyway, all by Jerry Goldsmith's son, actually, Joe Goldsmith. And wow, I was listening to that all morning today, in between that and James Gleek's book, Time Travel. And fuck, what a masterful little, and it brought something to mind to me. Just a masterful soundtrack, right? But it brought something to mind to me. I am, myself, I've always felt, and I'm not the only person that says this sort of thing, I think a lot of people feel this way. They feel like they're out of time, right? Speaking of time travel. But I think a lot of people feel they're either born too late or they were born too early, right? They either belongs at some point in the past. I know a lot of ANCAPs wish they lived in the 1950s, or they sorry, I shouldn't have said that. No, I should have said that, but I know that I shouldn't say a lot. Okay. Just the prominent ones, it seems. And or there's a lot of people, that feel that they should have been born in the far future. Obviously, I've generally felt myself I should have been born in the far future, living in the time of Star Trek or something like that, right? But at the same time, I'm so happy for the time frame that I have lived in. I'm so happy to have, and I mean this, okay, so I was born in 81. I am really happy to have grown up in the 90s, and meaning growing up in the 90s, meaning that as a teenager, even though I would get a job pretty early on, much to the chagrin of my parents who didn't want me to, but I did it anyway, just maybe to piss them off. I still had a lot of free time and not a whole lot of responsibilities, and the weight of the world isn't on you, right, at those, when you're a teenager, usually. Some of us, I guess it is, depending upon your family situation. But I had a lot of free time, and so I got to use that time, honestly, like I played a lot of video games, watched a lot of TV. But what I'm happy about is that the big things that were getting promoted at the time were just some of the greatest shit ever made. For example, Babylon 5, Stargate SG-1. I mean, those were, and of course, Star Trek was in its heyday at the time. But these were like the main three things getting schlepped around as far as science fiction. So if you're a science fiction fan, look, that's what you were fucking watching. That was what was available. You understand? You didn't have, it wasn't like this deluge of TV shows that we have now where, you can't possibly keep track of them all. No, at the time, in the 90s, science fiction was more or less, I know there were other shows, and I know them all. Earth Final Conflict, Andromeda, I get into Star Hunter, there's Space Priest, there's tons of them, right? I know. You know who you're talking to, right? I'm the king of the nerds, and I'm not fucking kidding. I am the king. So, in the 90s, though, but the big three, really, the major ones. And yeah, I don't know if you want to consider Highlander science fiction. I guess it kind of is, but that was certainly, that was the for a while, it was the number 2 show in the world, right under Baywatch. In the world, because, people outside of America have taste, including Baywatch and Highlander. So the big three were, SG-1, you had just tons of Star Trek to choose from, either in syndication or running new, whatever. And you had Babylon 5. And I'm just so happy that I was there to really experience those shows, and that I didn't fall prey to the mindset that I think most people fall prey to today, that because it's old it sucks, or because the effects aren't that great it sucks, or because the acting isn't necessarily at the same caliber maybe that acting is today, that it sucks and I can't bother to watch it, or that that I was even used to watching television without having to binge. Now, granted, binge watching actually helps with shows like Babylon 5, right? Because they have huge story arcs, and that can make it enjoyable. But yeah, I'm just really glad. And we were, to use a term I usually don't like to use, we were really fucking blessed in the 90s. Because sure, we didn't have the same amount of science fiction that we have today, but fucking A, these are like the best shows ever made. And they're the best shows because at the time, in the 90s especially, this is true from the 70s upwards, and even before, but really in the 90s is when you were finally getting to that sweet spot, largely a charge led by The Next Generation, quite frankly. But you're getting to that sweet spot where suddenly television, there was the expectation that what science fiction on television had to match science fiction in the theater on the big screen, right? And so you had these production teams for these shows, SG-1, B5, and Star Trek, of course, was already well on its way. But let's just say B5 and SG-1 were they had to come up with the most wild experimental shit, and they have been, and I didn't realize some of this until I was yeah, I mean, those shows, to finish my sentence, those shows have been so influential on everything else that came after it. And they're still being looked back by actual, I mean, I know that, most people that watch TV are stupid and, they can't appreciate it. But the people that actually make the television shows that the dum-dums watch, like Game of Thrones or whatever else, they admit that they go back to Babylon 5 and SG-1 as reference material for how to make things look fresh, interesting, colorful, whatever else. And I didn't come to realize this until I picked up the DVD set. And this is another thing that I think I feel blessed about from being in the 90s and the early aughts. I picked up the DVD set because it's the only way you can get it, of Babylon 5. And I was watching, I watched both the pilot movie, The Gathering, from, what was that, from like 93? I watched that with the director's commentary, or, with Straczynski on commentary. And I think he had Gina Iacovelli on there as well. And I watched in the beginning, the Babylon 5 movie in the beginning, that also had Straczynski doing, the commentary, because on DVDs, that was one of the big selling points, is that you could get like directors or creators commentaries over what you were watching. And I was, in the background, in between working, I had those kind of playing in the background. I mean, I know those movies by heart, so watching it with the commentary, made it very interesting. But, listening to like all the production and everything, first off, fuck Netflix, right? I mean, like, Netflix does great things. I'm not saying that. And it's great. We're finally going to get that Sense8 finale in June, by the way. I think it's June 8th, of all ironies. But like, fuck Netflix and all these streaming services, because while they could offer the commentary track, they generally don't. And that there is just magic and gold and whole new ways to experience things inside of those commentary tracks that are just remarkable. We're going to get into the questions, folks, and I'll stop talking about geeky shit in a second. All right, relax. But I want to get this out. And you come to respect just what exactly, like, because when you get into that, I mean, it's far better than any making special, because you're almost like real time experiencing what's going on, or it's as close to real time as being there, or as you can get. And man, like, I mean, they were just doing such brilliant shit back then, really groundbreaking stuff. And I have so much respect, for when people do that. And the ingenious ideas that they had, because they didn't have like the level of CGI effects. I mean, Babylon 5 had tons of CGI, but because they didn't have the same level of effects that they had today and everything. I mean, like, there's just genius shit going on the whole time. And I mean, there's so many things that I learned from the commentaries and all that. And like Babylon 5, I didn't know this until I watched The Gathering with the director's commentary on, with Straczynski talking. And he said the reason that the character of Delenn, the Minbari character Delenn, why she looked so odd in The Gathering was that originally she was going to be male. But it's a female character. And what was going to happen was that at the end of season 1, spoiler alerts, folks, show's only been around for 30 years. Or 20, sorry. At the end of season 1, the character of Delenn was going to become a woman. It was originally a man, and then it was going to become a woman. So they had they had Mira Furlan, the actress, playing the male character. And it didn't end up working out that way, like for whatever reasons. But regardless, holy fuck, that show was so ahead of its time. I mean, that was pretty much going to be pushing around some transgenderism. Great, to say nothing of the fact that it was the first show to have a bisexual character in Ivanova, and one of the first shows to discuss lesbianism and all these other things. I mean, like, that show was so ahead of its goddamn time. I mean, way ahead of its time. And it never gets the respect that it deserves, But I'm so glad that I was there, that it was the only thing that networks could promote that was science fiction. I mean, yeah, you had Sequest, and all that. And I love Sequest, at least the first season anyway. I know you had those too. But, like, that's what was getting pushed, and so you watched it, right? Because that's what was getting pushed. But I'm so glad that that's what was getting pushed, because that gave me kind of the quote-unquote social permission to watch it. Because most people now, for whatever reason, I don't know, they think it's dumb to watch those shows. I can't grasp it, just because something's old, like even The Day the Earth Stood Still from 1951, so it's old. What does that have to do with anything? What, the acting's not up to snuff? Is it a good story? Oh, are the characters cool? Oh, well, okay. So the fuck what about everything else? Fuck it. I don't care. Anyway, yeah, it's really, I mean, we're kind of missing something today compared to what was miraculously being done in the 90s. And I really feel like it's shy of miracles that those shows ever got made, that they could get to the levels of production that they could in the first place. Wow. And the other thing that we're missing, man, streaming services and even torrenting, even though torrents you can put in like in an MKV file, you can put in, separate audio tracks and everything. Yeah. I'm really feeling it like that, having all those special features. And look, the Blu-rays today, like they don't have them, like I've gotten some recent Blu-rays for recent films and they don't bother putting any special features on them. They don't fucking care. And I get it. The only reason that they were putting these things into was to get people away from VHS and get them onto DVD. Whether people used the special features that came with the DVD or not, they wanted them to buy. It was a reason to get people to buy into it, and so they promoted it. So I just feel it's all fortuitousness, because at the end of the day, all this shit was marketing, right? All this shit was just about making a buck for the studios, for Hollywood and whatever else. But I'm glad I was there to be able to, to where they were willing to at least pretend that they cared about the artists, the people that created Babylon 5, SG-1 and whatever, and that they gave you the materials to, to experience it in ways that weren't previously possible, honestly, before the 90s, before even DVDs and before a lot of the effects that these shows were pioneering at the time. I'm just, hashtag blessed. That's how I feel about it. And I feel bad for anybody that can't appreciate this shit. I really, really do, because you are missing out on just some of the finest art that humanity's ever put together. So, okay, that was 15 minutes of me talking about all that. And we've got tons of questions to get into, but it's something that it struck me. It really hit home. And again, I know that it's not like there was some golden era where Hollywood, where, TV studios and whatever actually gave a shit about art. That's not what the bulk of any kind of mainstream entertainment is about. It's about making a buck. It's not actually about the art. I mean, it can be if it's a prestige film or something like that. Certainly that doesn't happen in TV. But generally, it's not about the art. I understand that. It just so happened that these production teams and these creators and writers were so clever that they snuck in great art, underneath the guise of, of something that could make the studios a buck or two, and that they felt was worthwhile. So I feel really, I'm just very happy that I was alive then, and that I got duped into watching it just because it was the only thing around. And then you find out that, well, it's not just that it was the only thing around, but it's the greatest thing that's ever made, and nothing's ever going to top it. Most likely nothing will ever top it. I just can't picture that. I can't imagine something that could get away with being as unique, and as, shall we say, individualistically high standard. I mean, because, like, what's the message of everything today? The message in every fucking, from the Avengers to take your pick, is, oh, we got to work together. Oh, unity, blah blah blah. Individualism's not a part of the day with any of this shit today, and I don't think it ever will be again. Not in what's mainstream, not in what HBO's making, not in any of that stuff. You're not going to get that anymore. It's not going to happen, and people don't even seem to want it anymore. In the 80s, it seemed to be a thing, like Knight Rider and MacGyver. You could get away with that. One guy against the world. Sure. But today, oh, no. It's got to be team. We got to be unity. We got to work together, blah, blah, blah. Set aside our differences. No, you should be fucking embracing your differences, God damn it. That's the very essence of the human condition and human freedom. But whatever. All right, let's get on to some questions, for fuck's sake. Well, here's a little something. So I'm going to give you, this is just a little heads up for you, and this is tech related. I think it was Android or Droid Life or whatever the fuck the site is called. There's been a couple others that have been reporting on it now, but there is rumors from a very reliable source apparently at Google that YouTube Remix, which we've talked about this, and I've talked about this in the past, but I just want to give you a reminder, so if you need to get ahead of the game. YouTube Remix, which is this proposed new music service that Google is going to come out with, is apparently going to replace Google Play Music. And Google Play Music is going to shut down. Now, whether or not this means that you're going to lose, like I don't know if YouTube Remix is going to have, all right, back up. So Google Play Music, the main advantage with Google Play Music wasn't the amount of songs that it had. It wasn't that you could buy albums. Well, that's an advantage because that's going the way of the dodo. But the main advantage that Google Play Music had was that you could upload 50,000 to, if you had a Samsung Galaxy phone for some reason, you could upload 100,000 songs. Okay, that was the main advantage of your own songs. And that, if that's going away because of YouTube Remix, that sucks. Because it doesn't suck so much for me because over the past year, I've been getting all of my music off of Google Play Music where I had it like kind of cloud stored. But this just goes to show, this is just another nail in the coffin. Never, just do not rely on a Google service. Ever. Just don't. You know, I'm amazed Google Docs is still around. Fuck, I'm amazed Gmail's still around. In fact, for a little while, we thought Gmail would almost kind of go away and Inbox would replace it. Ended up going the other way around. But yeah, also there was the rumor, apparently they are transferring people away from development on Allo, and so Allo, which is Google's little, quote unquote encrypted, not really, but their Google Assistant based messaging service, they're canceling that. Just stop with this company. Don't base your business. Don't rely on this fucking company ever. Just don't. This shit just gets replaced and shut down all the time. Now, is it because the company's got to make money, and if the service isn't making money, what are you going to do? Well, sure. But then don't rely on them, okay? If they're going to move this fast with a lot of things. Google Play Music's been around for what? 5-6 years now. That's a pretty good run for a Google service, quite frankly. Some of them don't even run that long. But it's just another nail in that coffin. And honestly, I am concerned with the way that Microsoft is shaking things up, because what I had done, well, I had actually done two things. But the first thing, what I had done is I transferred all of my music from Google Play Music. I had to download it, or not all of it, but it's been a long process because we're talking about a lot of music. I downloaded it and would upload it to OneDrive, which would work through Microsoft Groove. Now, I don't know how long I would rely on that, with Microsoft is even going to keep that a possibility where you can listen to your own library through Microsoft Groove, through the app, the music player Microsoft Groove, which is available, on mobile and desktop and everything. Groove has a real advantage because you can play it anywhere. Just like Google Play Music, like you can play it on the web, you can play it, there's a desktop app for it on Windows 10, there's iOS and Android apps and everything. It's all over the place. But I don't know how long I'm going to count on that. So, fortunately, at the same time that I was putting it on Groove, I was also putting it on my own NAS, on my own network area storage, which has a music player that also has adjoining mobile apps for it. And that I can play through, the web portal or the browser portal, to my NAS. So bottom line being is that I wouldn't count on any of these services ever really, I've said this before, but I'm saying it really, really strongly right now. It is time to take back control of your fucking data. If you're serious about your shit, if you're serious about music and your music collection, I wouldn't even count on Apple. Don't count on any of these people. They want to get you all on a subscription service. They don't want you to have, independent use of your own music and shit like that. Take control of it. Set up your own NAS, whatever you got to do, or have a I don't know, 4 to 8 terabyte hard drive in your laptop or something. Whatever it takes. Do that. Get ready because, this shit's shutting down. All right, let's get into the actual questions here. So just putting that out there. And they're saying, according to the source, like Google Play Music's shutting down by the end of the year, by the end of 2018. So probably at Google I/O, they're going to talk about it and they'll announce YouTube Remix and they'll say Google Play Music's going to shut down. And you're probably going to have to get your music off of there. Just like the same thing happened when Microsoft shut down the Groove Music Pass or whatever it was called, where it was a streaming service, and it also had a music store built into it. If you bought albums off of that music store, you had to download them and then re-upload them to your OneDrive if you wanted to keep them within like the Groove app. So I would imagine it might be very similar with Google Play Music, but we'll see. Okay, so let's get into so this is from one person. It's two questions from one person. We'll break them down. Hey, Stallion, thank you for everything you do. Can't tell you how much I appreciate the show. Woo, thank you for appreciating it. Couple quick ones I heard today and thought I'd love to hear your hot or measured take on at some point. Yeah, sometimes I get hot, but I try to keep it measured. Boy, got hot on this week's episode, no doubt. By the way, folks, thank you. Some people were wondering where the show was, but as soon as actually some people sent me apologies when I finally released the episode on Monday night, this week's episode of Sovereign Tech Prime, episode 274. I just like I described in the intro, I hit an absolute perfect storm of problems that could happen to a mobile podcaster. At that moment. Right now I'm in the BDSM studio, but I just, and I recorded the eventual episode that way. And I understand, I released that episode just a few minutes after I got done recording it. And when that episode came out, it was after 11 o'clock at night. I don't have to do this, I know, but I care. I'll stay up all fucking night long to make sure you get your hookup, and I put in the time. I take, you have no idea, or maybe you have an idea, because I hope it shows in my general professionalism. I take Sovereign Tech so seriously. This is my, I know The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, he talks about how working out is his anchor. Certainly for me as well, working out is absolutely my anchor, no doubt. Okay. But at the same time, Sovereign Tech is completely, my anchor in life. Having an episode pretty much every Saturday minus, you could count the times on my hand, how many times I haven't released a show on a Saturday. And usually I let you know well ahead of time if I'm not. It is my absolute anchor, and being able to interact with you and hearing from you, from the listeners, that you find value in my show, just means the world to me. And I've just met the most beautiful people in my life thanks to Sovereign Tech. And anyway, it's contributed to my general happiness. Don't ever think that, you never know when you put yourself out there in the form of, say, a podcast or writing or whatever else. You never know just what that can bring into your life. Sometimes it can absolutely make so many dreams, or every dream, come true. So anyway, where were we here? So yeah, okay. Let's read this person's questions. Number one, I'm not well versed in cryptography. If Steve Gibson is right and the crypto in use by Telegram is at least somewhat questionable, why is the Russian government going the extra mile to hammer them? Is it just to make a statement? It seems weird, especially if their own people were actually using it too. Yeah, okay, so I've only briefly at points talked about how there is now, pretty much Russian legislation against Telegram, the company, and they want access, to Telegram servers. They want to be able to, look at what's going on inside, blah, blah, blah. Conversely, we've talked about for many years. Now, understand, when Sovereign Tech first started, 5-6 years ago, I was very bullish on Telegram. I was a fan. I still, in many ways, am. And part of the reason is that, we have the old Sovereign Tech saying, don't follow the money, follow the attitude. And, well, the attitude of Telegram is it's run by a triple black wearing anarchist. The real deal. Okay, same with Signal. Signal is also run by an anarchist. Good. Those are the people, and if you ask an honest tech journalist, especially one that covers cybersecurity, they like it when anarchists run companies. You can find them. You can find their quotes about it, that they're glad that there are people who trust no governments that are running these, running these incredibly important communication platforms, as am I. But eventually, we find out that, well, and first I was in favor of MT Proto. When Telegram first came out years ago, I was in favor of MT Proto. It's okay, well, yeah, it's time for some new protocols. The Signal protocol is a new protocol. It's time for all this. But then eventually, you kind of have to come to the admission, personally, that, well, this MT Proto is kind of an ugly hodgepodge of cryptography, and it's not as solid or as well reviewed as, say, what the axolotl protocol was, which is the Signal protocol. And Then also, like, I think in 2015, there was some auditing of the app, and you found out that so much was getting stored, even with secret chats, so much was getting stored in plain text on the device itself, on your phone. I mean, it's better than it getting stored in the server as plain text, which Telegram wouldn't do anyway. But for it to be in plain text on your device, I mean, that's a huge security no-no. That's a problem. Now, supposedly some of that's been fixed and, plugged and whatever, those kinds of issues. But those issues were there. Also, Iran has had some pretty hard sanctions against Telegram. And yeah, it does make you wonder. It's like, wait a minute, if Telegram's encryption can just get broken, what's with the dog and pony show of, hey, we want to see your servers when, theoretically, or, by most people's curiosity and questioning of Telegram's encryption itself, well, anybody should be able to break this. How do we know that we can trust it? Well, here's the thing, is that the bounty to break MT Proto, which actually we're up to MT Proto 2.0, which Telegram is using, has never been paid out. There's been like a $500,000 bounty or something, some stupid amount of money, where they said, look, if you can crack it, we'll, Pavel Durov will pay it out, which Pavel Durov is a billionaire, a multi-billionaire. And I think he could absolutely do that. He, like, that money's chump change to Pavel Durov, who's the head of Telegram, and like I said, is an anarchist. So what's the deal here if it's that bad? Well, here's the thing: is that, yeah, as far as we know, MT Proto really hasn't been broken. The thing is not, no one's saying that Telegram has been busted into. Okay, even though there are questionable practices that the app is engaging in, like I mentioned in 2015. But the concern is that because it's such a hodgepodge and because it's such a weird thing, it doesn't meet the very stringent standards of a security researcher or of a cryptographer. Okay, it doesn't meet those standards. Not saying that it's been broken, but it just doesn't meet those standards. So that's kind of where the disconnect is, as to where you have, cryptography that does meet, the highest standards, okay, of a cryptographer and security researchers. For example, ZK Snarks, which Zcash and Zencash use as a backbone. I mean, like, we're talking about, I know I use this term a lot, but it's important to get this in your head. We're talking about a genuine scientific breakthrough here, okay, in cryptography. This is huge, and that's been looked over, and it's not a hodgepodge. This is groundbreaking stuff. Same with the the Signal protocol. Okay, the Signal protocol, same score. It's been audited. It's been looked over. You're doing it right. Okay, and you find out about this stuff eventually, like iMessage and some others. There's some questionable shit that finally people have about this. Wait, how's the secure enclave setting this up? Oh, they can't really fix this part of it. Blah blah blah. So while a good chunk of the world relies upon the encryption and accepts in general the encryption that, like, iMessage offers, right, on iPhone, you ask an honest security researcher, cryptographer, and they're going to tell you, oh no, you should be using Signal, like if it matters that much. So there's encryption that in general works, okay, and it makes things. At the very least, it makes things expensive to do. And that's really the answer here, is that while Telegram's encryption is questionable, it does still make things very expensive for authorities to get into. And things being expensive for authorities is reason enough to pass regulation. Okay. And Russia probably feels they need to pass regulation because it is far too expensive to fuck with Telegram. Does that speak well of Telegram? Yeah, in a way it does. And look, I mean, despite concerns around the encryption scheme, of Telegram, it's still, especially in the cryptocurrency space, it's probably the most used messaging platform or social platform out there. It's huge. And that, that's all right. Like, I've said this a bunch of times with Telegram when I finally said, okay, look, I'm not going to defend, MT Proto anymore. I said with Telegram, you can still use it. Just understand that it's like a Facebook alternative and that the encryption might be a problem at some point. And like with the secret chats, you can feel a little more comfortable, even though when we found out that stuff was getting stored in plain text on your device, I wouldn't have been so comfortable about it. But regardless, I hope that kind of answers that, because, I think they just want to eliminate this being such an expensive thing. And also, this could all be, this is me getting a little conspiratorial. I think that this could all just be a PR stunt to get people off of Telegram in general in Russia, and to like try and like, you got to understand that Pavel Durov and the Russian government have a very, very ugly history. Okay. And I could see this as being just a way to fuck with Telegram itself and get people off of it, and to really like hurt Pavel Durov. Like, I think the Russian government would do that. You know, I think they're that vindictive. Okay. He already got kicked out of VK. I mean, like there's a million, there's so much shit. Like, you know, if Mark Zuckerberg, which Pavel Durov has been called the Zuckerberg of the East. I mean, that's a very superficial comparison, because I think Pavel Durov actually has ethics, as to where Zuckerberg has none. So, like, if Mark Zuckerberg wanted to leave the United States and take the entire company Facebook with it, and all of those tax dollars and all that other shit, I think the U.S. would pull some pretty vindictive fucking regulations on him, or like court orders or some kind of bullshit, you know, to keep him from doing that. I really, really think they would. And I think this could very much be, you know, like a part of, if it's not part of the answer, I don't think it might be all the answer, but I think it could be part of the answer, that this is the Russian government fucking with one of their big moneymakers and one of their little golden boys, which, I mean, not that Pavel Durov worked for the government, but he was an economic force in that country that is no longer there. And VK is, you know, losing ground, which he helped create. And VK is genuinely the Facebook of the East. That's a fair statement to make. You know, VK.com is, you know, losing ground by the day, and, you know, Russia is losing its social media. So, I mean, really, it could be something that simple. Bottom line being, yeah, don't trust Telegram with your life. Granted, I don't know how many messaging platforms I necessarily trust with my life, but you get my point. Okay. So I hope that kind of answers that. Steve Gibson, and I'm glad if you're listening to Steve Gibson, awesome. You know, the Security Now podcast, my personal favorite podcast. I get his point. He's coming from a very purist cryptographic, you know, standpoint, saying, well, their cryptography sucks. That doesn't mean it's been broken into, but that doesn't mean that it's good cryptography either. And, you know, that's that's kind of the thing. Like, shitty designed cryptography is still bad cryptography at the, you know, is still potentially really bad encryption at the end of the day. So whether it's been broken into or not, whether it's been broken into or not is not a great standard to hold anything by when it comes to cybersecurity. Maybe that's the whole moral of the story here. Okay, let's go on to question number 2. On a personal level, I agree with you 100% with your fuck Microsoft sentiment. It's a pretty disappointing reversal in what looked like promising positive change to me. On a practical or corporate IT level, however, your thoughts on their Chrome security extension that dropped today, privacy and other issues aside. Thanks. Yeah. I mean, you know, privacy and all that, you know, forget about it. Like, let's just forget about the fact that it's Microsoft for right now. Okay, when we talk about this. So what's being talked about here is the what's it called? The Windows Defender browser protection Chrome extension. Now, I think it's kind of stupid. First off, okay, I know I said forget about that it's Microsoft, but let's not. Calling it the Windows Defender browser protection Chrome extension is kind of a bad idea, right? Because Chrome is cross-platform. And why would you put the term Windows on there if you want a bunch of people to end up using this, you know, on Chrome, wherever they happen to have it installed? Bad. I would have called it off, like, hell, call it Office or call it Microsoft. I don't know. Give it some other name. But putting Windows Defender at the front is kind of shitty. Even though I get it, they're mentioning the Windows Defender, which is the quote unquote security suite. I put that in quotes. Security suite in Windows 10. But anyway, so the browser protection Chrome extension, this is to stop phishing attacks. It creates effectively like a continual blacklist or a whitelist, depending on which way you're looking at it, of sites that are harmful. And Microsoft, you know, their argument for why they're putting this out there and saying that it's better, because Chrome already has this kind of anti-phishing, list built or service built into Chrome itself. Okay, Google already has that built in. So why add on another? Well, first off, it doesn't hurt anything if you run it at the same time. Okay, like I think if you are again, privacy issues aside, yes, this is certainly a way for Microsoft to keep track of your web habits if you're using Chrome. I think that's the ultimate purpose of this. Okay, so let's get that out of the way. But regardless, I mean, Google's already watching everything you do, and we know that it's by you. We knew this. We've known this for 10 years. The instant you agree to using Chrome, whatever gets put into the Omni bar, which is what they call their address bar, right? Or the awesome bar, whatever. I think that was Firefox that called the awesome bar. In the Omni bar, whatever you put into that address bar at the top of the web browser goes to Google. That is an absolute fact. It's in the terms of service. It's not hidden. This is not, NSA, blah, blah, blah. It's a fact. Okay. So Google's already getting everywhere you go. Okay. Google's already collecting this. So putting Microsoft on there, this is Microsoft. I think this is what it's really about, is Microsoft's attempt to get in on some of the Chrome action and some of the data that Google already collects about you. This is a service that's built into Microsoft Edge already, obviously, which Edge is a very secure browser. Again, privacy aside, it's a very secure browser. Number 2, actually, I believe, under Google Chrome. So that's something. But I mean, running this at the same time, just for what it's meant to do, there's no harm in it. In fact, I think it's a great idea. Again, privacy aside, I think and other issues aside, it's a great idea to run this. And Microsoft actually points at there was a report from a security firm called NSS Labs that said Microsoft Edge, the browser, blocked 99% of phishing attacks, as to where Google Chrome only blocked 87% of intrusions, from phishing. So arguably, this extension would be doing the better job on top of what Google Chrome already has built into it, if you agree with the firm NSS Labs. So that's kind of that's the idea here, and yeah, I think it's a fine idea. Nothing wrong with that, and to get some Microsoft branding on other products, on other services like other browsers. Sure, go for it. I'm kind of surprised that they didn't release this for Firefox as well, but at the same time, I'm not. I really think that all of the tech giants would like for you to forget that Firefox exists. They really would. I mean, obviously, Apple has its own browser too, Safari, which I don't really have a problem with Safari. I mean, there's problems, but I don't take the same issues that other people do with it. I really, really think they would love it if you just forget that Firefox exists. And so, they want to keep it down. They're trying to pare down to kind of one enemy. So I can't picture, even though Microsoft has the OneNote web clipper, they've developed that for Firefox. It's not like they haven't made extensions for Firefox. So I'm kind of surprised that this hadn't come out for that. But, privacy aside, it's a great thing. I would deploy this across any enterprise environment, in my home, blah, blah, blah. Hell, I might even run it if I had a Windows machine and I was on Firefox. I might even run it there. I don't know. No. If it had Firefox, no, I wouldn't, because again, I like the fact that Firefox or Mozilla, I'm limiting where all of that telemetry is going to, how many companies it's going to. But that's getting into the privacy aspect of things. But no, there's nothing wrong with this. I think it's fine. I've tested it out, and it just works. I can't say anecdotally if it's actually doing anything better than anything else, but if you're to believe some of the research, well, it does quite a bit of good, actually. So there you go. That's my thoughts on the Windows Defender Browser Protection Chrome extension. Boy, that's a fucking mouthful. Anyway, all right, let's get into another quick question here. No, I won't do the wrestling one. Nobody likes when I talk about wrestling anyway, even though I get questions about it. Okay, here's one, pretty much just asking. Actually, I got 2 or 3 of these asking about what I thought the best mouse was, with hardware recommendations. So this is something I'm glad I kind of held off on talking about this. So back in November, when Microsoft released their Microsoft Surface Precision mouse, I picked that up. At the time, it was $100, okay, for that mouse, which is on the higher end of most mice that aren't gaming mice and, coming from some kind of company like that. And I've been using it for a few months now. And I have to say, at first, it was very impressive. But I have to say, I don't think that this thing's very durable, and I hate the light gray color on it. if you're to ask me what the best mouse was, I'm probably going to hand it to the MX Master. In fact, they have the new version, the MX Master 2S, which I've been messing with, and it's very nice. Very, very slick mouse, and really tracks super, super well. Logitech just knows what they're doing. I mean, the Surface Precision mouse, it seems to have Bluetooth troubles, and as long as it's connected, like it works very nicely. I mean, but I get stutters and other weird things going on with it. And in fact, there may be a huge disadvantage because it's so baked into, like, I think it's so tightly integrated with Windows 10 in certain ways, especially when you install, like, it works far better on a Linux laptop than it does on a Windows 10 laptop, which is kind of weird, right? Granted, it's not able to use all the features that it can do on a Windows 10 laptop, but that seems to be an advantage. So I would give it, again, I'm not getting into gaming mice or anything. That's a whole other realm. And then everybody has to, that's dependent on how you feel about like the weight of the mouse and everything. But just best all around general mouse, I still have to give it to the MX Master series. The 2S is just super nice and works really, really well. I put a link in the show notes for it if you want to pick one up. That'll go through the Sex and Science Hour link. And yeah, I mean, in fact, it's funny So the MX Master mouse will cost you $90, and it's continually cost $90 since it first came out a few months ago. Ironically, the Microsoft Surface Precision mouse is now like $30-$40 cheaper. It's not $100 anymore. I think you can get it for like 60 or 70 depending upon the store. And maybe that speaks to the fact that, well, over time this mouse starts to shit the bed pretty early. Though I will give it this: the battery life on the Precision mouse, on the Microsoft Precision mouse, is crazy. Like that battery, I remember after the first time I charged it, like I don't know how many. It felt like it had been 2-3 months before I had to charge it again. I mean, it was forever. So the battery life on that thing is fucking brilliant. Way, way better than the MX Master, but doesn't matter if it's going to like continually pause. I think maybe because it has some kind of sleep function that connects with Windows 10, because that's the thing, is it can take it a second to wake up sometimes. It's where with the MX Master, you just, you go, you pick it up and you go. So yeah, I would go with the Logitech MX Master 2S personally. So, okay, let's get into the philosophical question. Then maybe we can get into a little album of the week action here. So, hey, Stallion, new patron here. Thank you very much. Welcome to the club. And I've heard you talk about having the Galactic Mindset on many Q&As and in regular Sovereign Tech shows. Okay, first off, before I go further, thank you. If you're a new patron, I know I haven't talked about the Galactic Mindset in a while. So that means you've gone back and listened to a lot of the classic Q&As. Folks, there's thousands of hours of shit to listen to, that have already come out on Patreon. I feel like some patrons have only listened to like whatever came out, after they became a patron, and they haven't messed with anything in the past. I mean, we're talking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours, okay, of stuff. And I may have answered your questions in the past. Now, some questions need to get readdressed, right? Like when we talked about the bullshit with private internet access, VPN service, this past week, well, maybe next time around that I do my round of recommending VPNs, maybe private internet access won't be at the top of the list next time. Again, I just want to make it clear from what I said in episode 274 of Sovereign Tech. I don't think there's anything wrong with private internet accesses, VPNs, technically. I don't think there's anything wrong there. And I don't think they're bullshitting anybody as far as a lot of their marketing claims and everything. Okay. But I do think it's wrong to bring on Mark Karpellis into your company. All right. Like I do have a problem with that. But that doesn't mean if you bought a year's service plan or something, like I said, you can ask for a refund. And I know some of you have already, and I'm honored by that if my recommendation helped you with that. But, if you have a year plan set up or something, ride the year plan like that. I don't think that there's any bullshit that's going to happen technically with their VPN. It's just a company thing that's stupid. And, you want to follow the attitude of a company. Well, Mark Karpellis is a pretty shitty fucking attitude. So, all right. Anyway, just to make that clear. And as I recommended, if you wanted to switch, I recommended AirVPN or even setting up your own, which has gotten significantly easier just in the past month to do, by the way. So, okay, let me read on with the question here. So, I've heard you talk about having the Galactic Mindset on many Q&As and in regular Sovereign Tech shows. Could you describe it in more detail and how you started developing the idea or your Galactic Mindset? Okay, I've kind of talked about it already, what I consider the Galactic Mindset. I'm not going to describe it more in detail. Like, I'm not going to go into that, and I'll explain why I don't want to necessarily go into that. But the basic idea, if somebody hasn't heard me talk about this before, the basic idea is that you think about whatever, like when you're looking at a situation, when you're reading a story, and I don't mean like fiction, even though fiction could certainly apply too, but when you're reading, a news story or something like that, the first way you want to think about it is, the first way you want to think about anything is, what does it matter on the grandest scale of them all? Which I would argue, I mean, you could say the universal scale if you want to go that far, but I just chose galactic. Okay. But on the galactic scale, okay, like what does this matter in the grand scheme? And you quickly find, is what I mean to say. You quickly find that it probably doesn't mean much, in the grand scheme of things, and in the future, like, its ramifications are nil. So, like I think that's a very healthy mindset to harbor. And of course, also, it leads you to anarchism. It leads you to all other kinds of philosophies because, flags stop mattering, borders stop mattering, all these different things stop mattering. In fact, the last time I think I talked about it was when I was mentioning Neil deGrasse Tyson's most recent book, which is Astrophysics in a Hurry, which is a very new book. My concept of the Galactic Mindset I've had for a very long time. And I've talked about it on Sovereign Tech for years. But in that, he calls it the cosmic mindset, but they're very similar ideas. It's in the very last chapter of that very short book, Astrophysics for People in a Hurry. And he even mentions how there's no flags. There's, all these things like just don't mean anything anymore when you garner the cosmic mindset. But like I said, I've always called it the galactic mindset, and I'm not about to use Neil deGrasse Tyson's term either. Not that I necessarily have a problem with it. In fact, it rolls off the tongue much better, frankly. So that's the idea, is that you think of things on that scale, because that's the scale that, the universe operates under. So I'm not going to get into, like, the reason I don't want to get into deep into this subject is because I'm not trying to create some kind of philosophy for people to follow. I'm not, and I've always talked about this for years on the show, like that I have no interest in what's called being L. Ron, as in L. Ron Hubbard. And I don't think I'm that important of a person or that popular of a person where that could happen in the first place, but I just don't want it to happen at all. Okay, I want you to think for yourselves and do your own research, right? Verify what I say, things like this. That's good, okay? I don't want to be taken at face value or even much deeper at all on anything. But anyway, so the part I will answer is, how did I start developing the idea of the galactic mindset? So there's a book that I've mentioned in previous, actually it was originally a Sovereign Tech special, but it's been in previous Patreon content now, where I talked about the top 8 nonfiction books. So when I was younger, there were there's a couple things that led to this, but I'll just mention one. There was something that occurred significantly before, but then there's one that was a little bit later on. There's a book called The Art of Shenku, okay, by a guy named Zeke. That's not his real name. But anyway, The Art of Shenku, and Shenku stands for the art of the, like, intergalactic traveler or something like that. It's not a real thing. Like, it's something that this guy made up, okay? And this guy, Zeke, is someone who, like, literally, took a boat all the way around the world. And I don't mean like a yacht either. Okay, like a little boat. And everything that he's kind of learned is like survival guide, and everything is put into this little book. It's not little, actually. It's a very large book, The Art of Shenku. Easily one of the best books ever compiled and written, and it's infinitely fascinating. You could read it over and over and over again. It's just a brilliant little book. Very inspirational to me as a younger man. And in that, you get this concept, and you can understand when the book is written by a guy who's literally traveled the entire world in a little boat. there's this idea that we are, all of us, just travelers, no matter what. You know, we're just, I mean, regardless of whether you have a home, you know, like a concrete home that's set in stone, couldn't move, you have to tear it down, blah, 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 and you live there and you never leave it, you're a homebody, whatever. We're still travelers. All of us are technically travelers. And I think, especially when you think of the galactic mindset, that's absolutely true. I'm not saying using this next term in the sense that like environmentalists use it, but we really are on spaceship Earth. Okay? Like this is a little spaceship that is just, you know, going around the galaxy, the universe, and we're just floating on it. You know, we're traveling with it. Okay, we're floating with it. So in a real sense, we are galactic travelers. Okay, like, I mean, we you know, just based upon the fact that this Earth is moving throughout the galaxy, you know, and it's not a fixed point or anything like that, and we go on. So when you think about things that way, I took on those many years ago. And like I said, ever since I was 17, ever since I was legally able, I had to get a note from my parents. But once I was legally able to like travel on my own on planes, I started seeing the world as quickly as I could. Okay, so I've always kind of had this traveler mindset anyway. But that's really like what started me on the idea of this galactic mindset, is that you're effectively, you know, people talk about, what is it, perpetual traveler or perpetual tourist, right? Like that's kind of a popular thing in libertarianism and all that. Really, we're all perpetual tourists or travelers, okay? Like, because we're all moving on this spaceship Earth. And I think when you take on the mindset, when you consider, okay, how would I act if I was constantly traveling to a new place? Am I going to, you know, like what's the most beneficial, what in my enlightened self-interest, which is what we all act upon, what is the most, and that's a term that I've, you know, held on to myself for a long time as well, because I originally heard it, guess where? Ooh, this show went full circle. Babylon 5. Jakar said it. So, you know, in our enlightened self-interest, what's the best way to get what we want out of life and to be happy? How do we act as we, you know, when you end up in, say, I don't know, fuck the Borneo or something like that? Well, it's probably a pretty good idea to not be an asshole. And it's probably a pretty good idea to learn as much as you can about the area you happen to be in. So this galactic mindset and like this idea of being a traveler, that we're all travelers, lends itself to, you know, being respectful, you know, being empathetic, to learning, lifelong learning, always learning because you're always somewhere new. And, you know, and being efficient and a lot of other things. And so I think it just like when you get that in your head that you're this traveler, like it starts opening up entire different mental worlds in the bubble universe that is your brain, that no one else has access to. Yes, it's a fact. No one else has access to your brain. Sorry, we're not all connected. Okay, but we are all travelers. And I think it behooves us to act as such, you know, and to act as if, while I think that there are interactions and there are relationships that humans can have because we are social creatures that can last us our entire lives and never go away, everything else is kind of impermanent. And, you know, change is the only constant in the universe, right? Or the only constant in life. I think it behooves us to think of things in that way. And again, that idea of just being like a constant traveler, even if you have been doing the same 9 to 5, same commute bullshit for the last 20 years, you are still a traveler in a very real and technical sense. Okay. Once you have that opens you up, like I said, to all these other things. And it eventually leads you to what I call the galactic mindset, where you think of things on the galactic scale. Like, what does this mean on the galactic scale? And personally, I consider it one of my little, not that there are such things as universal keys to success, but for me personally, it's one of my keys to happiness, is that I think of things in this way, that I keep things in that perspective. And what it allows for is for the little shit to not bother me, which seems to bother everybody else. And it also gives me perspective on what's genuinely important. And what's genuinely important, you know, under the galactic mindset and being a traveler, are relationships, are people. The rest of the stuff, It's fun. It's nice to experience. It's great if you can carry it with you where you go. And I'm not like arguing for minimalism necessarily, but it's all kind of like, yeah, it can go away. Like, and it probably will. So plan for that. Right? Expect that. But the relationships don't have to go away. Love doesn't have to go away. These kinds of things don't have to go away. Your passions don't have to go away. They can stay a part of you your whole life, from kid to grave, even though I don't plan on ever dying. It's not some spiritual thing. I'm an atheist, but yeah, I mean, you really come to realize that the relationships are what actually matter. This is something that always bothered me, because look, folks, there was a time where I considered myself an anarcho-capitalist. It was years ago, but there was a time where I considered myself that. But there was always something that rubbed me the wrong way about this, holding up this what's the term I'm looking for? Not edifying, like this beautifying or canonizing of, the concept of the free market, which, look, I like markets fine. I like free markets fine. I'm all for it. I am a supporter of free markets all the way. Please don't confuse what I'm saying. Okay. But it always like this, just constantly like thinking about it and holding it up as holy and blah, 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 always bothered me, because, the human condition is so dynamic. Like, our purpose in life is not to just buy shit. Okay? It's always bothered me that, like, even, the oldest, when I first got into, the liberty movement, like first moved to New Hampshire and all this stuff, I came at it from my, tech background and with, my cybersecurity angle, which is everything that I brought to Sovereign Tech, which is why I started Sovereign Tech, because no one else was espousing these opinions. And this kind of show didn't exist within this broader philosophy, okay, of libertarianism / anarchism, whatever. And at the time, it really didn't. Okay, so I come with that perspective, and anytime I would raise these concerns saying, no, yeah, this isn't good, like targeted advertising, that's a way to track you, that's anti-privacy, blah, blah, blah. And then, I would hear people, and hell, when I was a co-host on Free Talk Live, people would call in, or the other co-hosts would say, well, it's just, it served me better ads, and so what do I care, blah, blah, blah. What do you mean? Look, if you're just willing to let anything slide, let all your human liberties get trampled on just so that you get better suggestions of what to buy, man, you've got fucked up very skewed look on life and look on what humanity's all about, what being a human is all about. Like, if being human is just consume, buy, blah, blah, what the fuck? No. That's not what this is about. Life is about more than buying shit. And it's about more than selling shit to other people. In fact, those things it's just a process. It's an after effect. It's a byproduct. It's not the core. Like, even the concept of the market, that's not the centrality of human existence. What the hell's wrong with these people? Holy fucking A. It's driven me nuts for years. I backed up from the microphone. Fuck. So I think when you get this galactic mindset, you put that shit in its place. No one's saying markets are evil. No one's saying they're bad ideas. No one's saying anything of the sort. But it's not the center of our goddamned existence, and it's not the argument for every part of existence, and it's not the argument for why there shouldn't be governments. It's not the argument. I mean, it's a process. That's all it is. It's a choice, even. I'm not saying it's a bad one either. I'm just saying, put it in perspective. It drives me up the fucking wall. Look, I love entrepreneurship. I love people that want to get shit done, that make something of themselves, blah, blah, blah. But it's not because I love somebody because they made a multi-million-dollar company. It's because of what, like, the person that was able to create that, the person that had that temerity, that had the, the testicular fortitude. How about that? They had the ability. I love their ability to pull that off. Not that they actually did it. I don't love their company, as in their organization. And I love honestly, I mean, and this is where, markets are beneficial. Sure. The person that comes out of that, The confidence that comes out of a person that realizes that they can do anything. That's sexy. But it's not, but that's what I love. I don't love necessarily the market, that allowed for it or anything like that. Because that person, I mentioned, wow, we're doing all kinds of full circles here. I mentioned Rambo 3 earlier, right? The soundtrack. How about the movie Rambo 3? There's the great line from the Colonel in that, where he says to Rambo, he says, the warrior was always there. He gives this analogy of, I think it was like whoever the fuck it was, Da Vinci or somebody, whoever was sculpting something. You'll know the quote in the movie. It's beautiful. And he's saying, the person asks, like, how did you do that? He's like, well, I didn't make this, talking about sculpture, the artist talking, or the sculptor talking about the sculpture. He's like, I didn't make it. The sculpture was always there. I just chipped away the rough edges. And so then the Colonel says to Rambo, he says, with you, the warrior was always there. We just chipped away the rough edges. And that's the thing. The person that has these abilities, that if they had the framework, or even within or if they had the infrastructure, or even within the government run infrastructure, or not government, I mean, everything's government run, right? Pretty much, or not everything, but so much of it is. With the, should I say, the legacy infrastructure that we have right now, how about that? Okay. That person is always there. And that's what I love, and just, they've chipped away at the rough edges to be that person. Okay. But I don't love, whatever system or whatever process existed that allowed that person to, say, completely flourish, or to prove, or to drive the point home of who they are. I love the person. And we forget that. It's not about markets. It's about people. Markets are just the process. And so when you get, and you might be saying, what the hell am I reacting to? Well, look, I mean, I don't spend much time on social media, but over the years, the past few years, when you're on social media, you get people, I mean, just being like the ugliest fucking assholes, all because somebody maybe doesn't agree with the process of free markets, and they shit all over this person. Baby, where is your perspective? When did you start holding up the market as God and stop respecting the person? What the fuck happened to you? We're a social species. It's true. We're individuals, but and it's almost paradoxical. But paradoxically, we're also social creatures at the same time that we're individuals. And that comes as I think, that's a part of the biological function, okay? Not the mental choice, the biological function of being human that comprises empathy, which many other creatures and animals on this little spaceship Earth happen to have. It comes out of that, like that we want to express it. We want to do that. We want to share things. Without sharing things, it's all bullshit. And I just see so many people like just completely forget that and trash that whole idea. And yeah, look, yeah, you're an individual. You're the most important person on the planet. And so am I. And so is that person. And so is that person. And so is that person. That's the real paradox that we all have to deal with. And I've talked about many times. That's egoism. But we forget that because we start holding up these social constructs as being more important than the people, than the person, than the individual. And what a shame. And no wonder those ideas that you think are just so logical and so perfect and, if they just understood, if they just thought my way. It's no wonder you never get any traction with that shit and you just come off as an asshole and you properly get called an asshole because you are. Because you're ignoring what's actually important in life. The person. So I didn't plan on going down that road. Because I didn't want to I'm worried somebody's going to take all that and be like, this is the Galactic Mindset. Oh, no. No, we're individuals. We all have different ideas. If you want to run with some of mine, okay, I can't stop you, but I'm not trying to create any new philosophy or anything here. Again, I think that all this just kind of leads to accepting other philosophies that have already long existed by people much smart that were either codified, or not codified is a bad term, but that were collated by people much smarter than I over the past few hundred years, if not earlier. So anyway, that's it. I am oh no. All right. No. All right. We'll go the next few minutes because we got to talk about the album of the week. Got to give you an album of the week, which is great because this will let things cool down. Okay. So I'm going to give you two, okay, because you're going to listen to one and then you're going to want more, and I'm going to give you a little diversity on that. So my album of the week this week is a little bit of a cheat because it's kind of a greatest hits, okay, and it's by Yngwie Malmsteen, who I am a huge fan of, have been a fan of for a long, long time. I remember the first time I heard the song that he did with his Rising Force. Yngwie's kind of a tough act to follow because he has like a bunch of different projects that all sort of has his name in it. And the thing is that if you're looking through it through a streaming service and you don't actually know about Yngwie Malmsteen, you could miss a lot of albums that he's put out there because he's such a musical genius, and he really is, that, you know, he covers a broad spectrum. And he has all of his stuff under a bunch of different projects, kind of similar to I think one of last week's album of the weeks was Devin Townsend, who, you know, you find him under a bunch of different titles and names, you know, Devin Townsend Band, Devin Townsend Project, blah blah blah. Yngwie does the same thing. Like, man, his 2009 album Angel of Love, oh, that's just pure gold, but you'd never find it on most of, like, if you just typed in Yngwie Malmsteen, ironically, it probably wouldn't come up, and usually his Rising Force stuff would. Anyway, but I remember hearing, you know, the first song that I ever heard by him, which he had Joe Lynn Turner as a frontman. I mean, a lot of Yngwie's stuff is just instrumental guitar, and it's the greatest shit ever, next to Joe Satriani, maybe. But anyway, he had Joe Lynn Turner fronting the band at the time. This would have been in the 80s, and the song is Heaven Tonight. This could be paradise. Oh man, it's so hot. I love that song. And then, you know, you go on to find, all right, I want more from this. And then you hear Black Star and you hear all these other great songs, you know, and I mean, you're just hooked. Like, Yngwie is such a crazy force. Yngwie is actually the guy that more or less got me into Deep Purple, because he talked about how much he loved Deep Purple and how they were like the biggest, you know, when in America, you think Led Zeppelin, because Yngwie is not, if the name didn't give it away, he's not exactly American. You know, he would talk about how, oh yeah, in America, Black Sabbath and Zeppelin are the big deal. He says in the rest of the world, Purple is everything. Deep Purple is bigger than all of them. You know, and I remember when he first said that, and I was like, well, I got to find out about Deep Purple. And then, you know, that turned into a lifelong obsession that still goes to this day. I love Deep Purple. So anyway, Yngwie, yeah, he does a bunch of different stuff, instrumental stuff. Sometimes he'll have a front man. He's had Tim Ripper Owens on some of his albums, you know, who took over for frontman duties in Judas Priest when Rob Halford was out of the way for a little while, or out of the picture for a little while. But anyway, yeah, so he has a lot of different stuff. So there is the first album that I ever bought of Yngwie it's called, and I think it's still kind of the best introduction to his work. It's called the Yngwie Malmsteen Collection. That's literally what it's called. It's from 1992. Might be kind of hard to find, but it's well worth the find because it pulls from all of his different project names, even in 92. And obviously he's done tens of albums after that. But it's a great intro. It opens up with Black Star. It has Heaven Tonight on it. Deja Vu. I mean, it has his trilogy, Opus. I mean, it just has a ton of great, it's a great little selection of music from Yngwie, and it's really the way to get started. So the Yngwie Malmsteen Collection from 92, that is my album of the week. And I mean, it will take you to worlds undreamed of. Another one that will take you to worlds undreamed of. This is the sequel. So after you listen to Yngwie, you're like, wow, I really want to get into this instrumental, you know, rock or progressive metal, whatever you want to call it, prog rock, you know, take your pick. Aside from Joe Satriani, who I've talked about way too many times, no, you can't talk about him enough, who I've talked about so many times on Sovereign Tech. The next album I want you to check out was kind of the next thing I found after that. Besides Surfing with the Alien by Satriani, is Steve Vai's Alien Love Secrets from 1995. This album opens up with Bad Horsey, and you're going to listen to that. You can fuck to Bad Horsey, baby. I mean, Bad Horsey is a badass song. I mean, it is awesome. Pure instrumental, other than some horse sounds that go off during it. Alien Love Secrets, yeah, I think that's probably my favorite Steve Vai album. Steve Vai, of course, who I wanted to find out about because I found out that he kind of did a lot of the Wild Stallion stuff for Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, or Bogus Journey. And Steve Vai is just God, you know? So, and he's done so much other work. But I mean, understand, like, you know, why do I hold Satriani up? Because Satriani taught Vai, right? You know, Joe's at the top of the heap, and Yngwie, of course, Yngwie's, you know, there too. But anyway, yeah, Alien Love Secrets by Steve Vai. I mean, right from Bad Horsey, you know you're in for a good time. And there's some really, you know, like some sensual stuff in there as well. I mean, it really covers a lot. And you'll get into all of Steve Vai's stuff, just like you'll get into all of Yngwie's stuff, and I don't think you'll be disappointed. This is real musicianship. I mean, like complex, heartfelt, deep musicianship. I mean, just wild shit going on. That really, there's nothing else that sounds quite like it. So do check those out. And if you want to go for the bonus, yeah, I mean, start listening to Joe Satriani, and it doesn't matter where you start, you're hooked. He's the man. So, okay, all right, that's it. We went a little long with this Q&A. I'm going to wrap this baby up. Of course, other content to come out. We still have our Star Wars update for this month that Robin and I will be doing. And we still got a Relationship Rhombus to come out, and maybe there will be some other things. Thank you for the kind reviews. Got some very kind reviews, even blog posts and other things written up about my recent release that Ellen, Stephanie, and I worked on for Audio the Ancients, the Emerald Tablet. I'm honored. I'm glad people said they really loved my music in that, and that I wrote. I composed, put together the whole thing. I mean, you know, I did it on a, you know, I make my music. It's electronic, so it's on a computer. It's not like, you know, and keyboard. It's not like I'm playing an instrument, so I don't want to say that I played the music. But I mean, I, you know, made it. I composed it and made it. And I'm really honored that people loved the music particularly, and that they really loved Ellen's performance. And it was nice to have Stephanie, you know, get in there with a little introduction. I mean, I want them to be, you know, a part of everything. So it was really cool to include them, and future Audio the Ancients releases will also be featuring, you know, Stephanie and Ellen as much as, you know, that they fit in within it. So really, really exciting stuff. So if you want to get your copy of that, of Audio the Ancients, just go to audiotheancients.xyz, and that will take you to my Bandcamp page where all of my Audio the Ancients albums are. And there are going to be more of those coming in the very, very, very near future. I already have music written. I already have a lot of it done. And, you know, we'll get some performances down, get the effects laid in, and away we go. I have so much fun, you know, getting to express history and show people history in that way. So, all right, that's really it. I will see all of you on the other side.